Hello there. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Odyssey by Homer. I hope that I will be able to encourage you to read this because it's fantastic. Very quick review of the plot. The Trojan War is over. You know, the one with the Trojan horse and all of that. The film with Brad Pitt. That's all done. Everybody's gone home except for Odysseus. Odysseus has not been able to go home. He is stranded, I should say, on an island, and he's been on this island for 9, going on 10 years. And this book is the story of how Odysseus gets home. In a very tiny nutshell, what this is all about. The first 5 chapters are about Odysseus's wife, Penelope, and their son, Telemachus. Odysseus left to go and fight in the Trojan War when Telemachus was just an infant. The Trojan War took 10 years, and now Odysseus has been on an island, stranded for 9 years, and so now Telemachus has grown up to be nearly a man. He's 19 years old. What has happened is that since Odysseus has not been able to come home from the Trojan War, all of these suitors have laid siege to his home, all vying to become Penelope's new husband. We are quickly told that these suitors are awful because what they are doing is they are quite consciously eating Odysseus and Penelope out of house and home. Every night they are having a feast, they are drinking all the wine, and they are slaughtering all the fatted pigs for their feasting. Because of the very strict rules according to hospitality, they are not sent away. It is Penelope's responsibility because it seems that she must choose a new husband. And Odysseus being away for such a long time, it is reasonable to assume that he has been killed. And so these suitors, they feel that it is only reasonable for her to choose one of them to be her new husband. From the way the story is told, we quickly learn to hate these suitors. And it is said often that if Odysseus were ever to return, he would make these suitors pay with their lives. And they're aware of this, but they're quite willing to take their chances. I suppose the joys of feasting every night are too much for them to say no to. And also, I guess Penelope is quite a catch, because they will inherit all of Odysseus's lands, his farms, and his stores of gold and all of that. The son, Telemachus, decides that he needs to do something. He needs to go and find real evidence whether his father is alive or not, and if his father might be alive, where he might be. And from there, we get to Odysseus. And in the first meeting we have of Odysseus is actually, not a very heroic figure, not a brave figure. We actually get the image of an old warrior who is sitting, looking out into the vast expanse of the sea, the horizon, and he is weeping. Why is he weeping? Well, he is weeping for his homeland and for his family, whom he loves and misses terribly. He's not alone on this island. He is with the goddess Calypso, who is keeping Odysseus as her consort, I suppose you might call it, her lover. And she has promised Odysseus, if you will stay here with me on this island and be my husband, I will make you immortal. That is what she has offered him. And he has turned her down. He says, no, I want to go home and I want to be in my country of Ithaca. I want to be with my wife. I want to see what kind of a man my son has turned out to be. Odysseus is the favorite of Athena, the daughter of Zeus, Zeus being the most powerful of all of the gods. And Athena chooses Odysseus as her champion and she favors him. So whenever he makes a prayer to the gods, he addresses it to Athena and she listens and she wants to help him. And so when Odysseus says, please, gods, Athena, if you're listening, please help me get off this island and help me get home. So Athena goes to Zeus and says, can't we do something? He's been on that island for 9 years. Can we not allow him to get home? And there is a bit of wrangling and it's complicated because Poseidon, don't forget, is Zeus's older brother. Poseidon hates Odysseus for reasons that will become clear later. Poseidon has decided that he will make Odysseus' life as miserable as possible before he is allowed to get home. And then in that middle section of the book, we get all of the exciting adventures of Odysseus on his way home. Now, it's a little bit complicated because what happens is from when he leaves the island with Calypso, they build, even though it's called a ship, I think it's little more than a raft, really, a raft with a sail. He is favored with a favorable wind, of course, from Athena, who's trying to get him home as quickly as possible. And then Poseidon turns around and says, "What's this?" It's that Odysseus who I hate so much, and he smashes his boat and he sends the waves and he sends the churning, troublesome seas and the wind, smashes his little ship and casts him away on another island where he has to fend for himself again. It's not meant to be, but it's humorous for me about how much Poseidon hates Odysseus. It's wonderful. And in this journey home, we get some of the most famous tales that people are very familiar with in the story of Odysseus and the Odyssey. Is when there's the story of when Odysseus and his sailors meet the Cyclops, and the Cyclops kills and eats some of Odysseus's men. And there is a well-known and often told story about how Odysseus escapes from this Cyclops by saying, "My name is nobody," and later he will blind the Cyclops in his one eye. When the Cyclops is running around screaming blind, because he's had this burning piece of timber stuck in his one eye, the other Cyclopses in the neighborhood are saying, "What happened? Who did this to you?" And he said, Nobody blinded me." And they said, "Well, if nobody blinded you, then what do you want us to do about it?" I think it might have come off better in the original language. And Odysseus escapes, and a few of the other things. Like one of the expressions we have today in our idiomatic language is between a rock and a hard place. And that expression comes from a chapter in the Odyssey that Odysseus has to sail between these two monsters. And one of the monsters, Scylla, is this like a snake-like creature, and she has 6 heads on these very long snake-like necks. As the sailors pass beneath her, all of her heads go down, and they remove 6 of the sailors, and they take back and they eat. And if the sailors are not quick, the heads will come back and take 6 more of the sailors. Now, so that's one side. And on the other side, we have this monster, Charybdis. That's it, Charybdis. Now, the monster Charybdis it's quite hard to understand what it is. And it seems to be a monster which sucks down the sea like a giant whirlpool, and whatever gets sucked into it can be eaten. But she just spews out the water. And it is said that it is much safer to pass by the Scylla side of the passage than to pass by the Charybdis. Anyway, but that is where the expression comes from, between a rock and a hard place, that you either have to pass by Scylla, who will definitely eat 6 of your sailors, or Charybdis, who will suck down all the water and everybody and the boat will all be destroyed. You are stuck between having to make one of 2 bad choices. Personally, I have 2 favorite sections in the book. One of them is very brief. One of them is the land of the lotus eaters, where Odysseus and his sailors, they put down on a certain island, and he sends some sailors out to make a reconnaissance to find out if the people are good, God-worshipping people, or if they are savages who will eat them, which seems to be the only 2 alternatives: good, God-fearing people, or barbarian cannibals who will come and destroy them quickly. So they have to put down to get some fresh water and fresh supplies. Hopefully they'll be able to steal some sheep or cattle from somewhere. These sailors go out to find what the native populace is like. And when they get to the land of the lotus eaters, they are people who are eating these lotus flowers, and they forget everything from their past life, and they do not care about anything except for eating the lotus. I suppose that was a reference to perhaps people who drink too much wine. All they care about is this inebriation, and they don't care about their family, their health, their welfare. All they care about is the immediacy of getting drunk and drinking wine and feeling drunkenly happy. In the Odyssey, Odysseus goes to find his men. Odysseus has to wrestle them back to the boat because they don't want to leave the land of the lotus eaters. They're very happy to stay there, just forgetting everything of their lives, and he brings them back to the ship. I like that because I think that that's something you can play with. Like, how can these people go back to being sailors after they have experienced this magical world of lotus eating? Similar in the way that people who have had drug problems in the past, they will say that there's no such thing as an ex-drug addict. You will forever be a drug addict. Your victory over the drugs is being someone who is not an ex-drug addict, but actually someone who just doesn't take drugs anymore. You are always an addict, but now you are an addict who no longer uses drugs. which is frightening. It's very frightening. So that's something I think about when I read the Land of the Lotus Eaters. And there is another chapter as well about when, the Sirens, which is another very famous episode that I think a lot of people are already familiar with. There are so many paintings. One of my favorite paintings from Greek mythology is actually the story of Odysseus and the Sirens. Some of the artists have taken liberty with the idea of the Sirens. In the Odyssey, the Sirens are these female creatures who are on the rocks, calling to the sailors or singing. The song of the Sirens is irresistible. If you hear it, you are hypnotized and you will go towards them and you will smash your boat upon the rocks and the Sirens will come and eat you. Whenever you see the Sirens, you should imagine them covered in blood and just chewing on the bones of the sailors. We don't often get that portrayal of them. We get the hungry and they are singing and they're very beautiful. See, Odysseus's character, he's not a hero in the way that we imagine heroes today with, who are very brave and gallant and their intentions are always good and pure. Odysseus is not like that at all. Odysseus is cunning. He often lies. He's a manipulator. He's a hero in another way, not above playing dirty. Quite happy when Athena is blessing him with superhuman strength and beauty of appearance. I don't say that he relies on her assistance, but he gets it so often that it does, he does seem to know that he is divinely protected. He's leaving the island of Circe, not Calypso now, Circe, the one who famously turned some of his men into pigs, but Odysseus got her to turn them back into sailors. So she has told him that he will be passing these Sirens, and it is very important that all of the sailors plug up their ears with honey and hemp so that they cannot hear. But Odysseus is allowed to hear as long as he is tied to the mast of his ship so that the sailors can sail on by without hearing the music of the Sirens, but Odysseus can hear them. And if he starts raving, please go closer to the Sirens, I need to hear the music more, the sailors have been instructed to tie him even tighter with more ropes because, they have hypnotized him. And again, that raises an issue of afterwards. Like once you pass by, it's not as though you forget the music entirely. I wonder how that works, because it's never really sat well with me that he's tied to the mast, he hears the music, they are really calling him, his mind is in a delirium, he wants to smash his boats on the rocks to be closer to this music, and he doesn't care if it destroys him. But once he's out of range, how does he, it just doesn't seem reasonable that he would be able to forget that music and to forget that feeling and to go on with his quest to get home. I imagine when you have been really hypnotized or addicted to something that it never entirely leaves you. There's always some fragment inside that's calling you saying, oh, do you remember how good it used to be? Don't you want to give it just one more try? One big thing in my life was that I used to smoke. I smoked for 10 years, cigarettes, and I quit smoking. And I'm not particularly strong-willed person. I'm amazed actually that I have had the fortitude to quit smoking and to keep to it I quit in 1999, so that's 24 years. Of all the things I've done in my life, that I have been able to stop smoking and keep away from cigarettes I honestly would not give myself that much credit. So why should you read the Odyssey by Homer? This is one of the very foundations of Western literature. This is one of the first books ever. And it's important for us, when we care about literature, to look at the roots and to examine where it all came from. I think it is extremely important to read Shakespeare. And when you do read Shakespeare, you begin to see how those stories have been retold and reused. And it's important. So it's important to be familiar with these classic stories so that when there is a new variation or a new iteration, we can recognize it. We can say, oh, yes, I see. That is borrowing very much from King Lear. The story here, that's something based on Don Quixote by Cervantes. That's very important reading. And if you're thinking, well, isn't it boring? Isn't it hard to read? First of all, it's not boring. This is an epic adventure tale. The word Odyssey in our language comes from this. The writing, at least in this translation, the writing is not hard to read. I'll read you the first paragraph. All right, chapter 1. Athena visits Telemachus. Athena, the goddess, Telemachus, Odysseus' son. All the survivors of the war had reached homes by now, and so put the perils of battle and the sea behind them. Odysseus alone was prevented from returning to the home and wife he longed for by that powerful goddess, the nymph Calypso, who wished him to marry her and kept him in her vaulted cave. Not even when the rolling seasons brought in the year which the gods had chosen for his homecoming to Ithaca was he clear of his troubles and safe among his friends. Yet all the gods were sorry for him, except Poseidon, who pursued the heroic Odysseus with relentless malice till the day when he reached his own country. That is not hard to read. That is very nearly like modern English. It's just that the sentences, a bit long, flowing, flowery sentences, not even close to being as difficult as reading Shakespeare. For me, reading it to understand the story and to know what it's all about, the Odyssey is one piece in Greek mythology. There's so much more going on all around it. Anything else? Well, I found that the last section of the book, say like the last third of the book, slowed down quite a lot. Like all of the exciting bits happens in the middle with Odysseus and the Cyclops, Odysseus and the, sailing between the monsters, Odysseus when he gets to the island with Circe, and Circe is this witch goddess who likes to turn men into animals. Once we got past that to Odysseus actually getting home and dealing with the suitors who've been dreading this moment, it slowed down quite a bit at the end. But I strongly recommend that you give it a try. I think you'll be very pleased with yourself for having read this. The Odyssey it's a great book, really exciting, and you are giving yourself the knowledge of the very foundation of Western literature when you read this. You are reading like one of the cornerstones, the very beginning of everything that has followed since then. And that's worth it. And as well, if you're still watching, from chapter 1, we are hearing about these suitors who are eating Odysseus's food, and he's drinking their wine, and they're laying siege to his wife, saying, when is she going to marry us? And by the time he does, at the very end, by the time he gets to Ithaca and he finds out what's been happening in his home, and he decides, all right, I'm going to kill these guys. It's like, we've had 300 pages of reading about it, and finally when he starts killing them, it's like, yes, I've been waiting for this the entire book. Finally, he's going to kill all these wine-drinking, pig-eating suitors who've been so annoying throughout the entire novel. It's just terrible how it just keeps going back to the suitors, and they're killing the pigs and drinking the wine and saying, oh, Penelope, when are you going to choose one of us to get married? He says, oh, maybe my husband will come. Oh, he's not coming home. Oh, we hope he doesn't come home. Finally, when he shows up and says, all right, it's time to die, you assholes. Yes, good. I've been waiting for this the whole book. This is Grant Loves Books. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. It's been so difficult to find the time to make the videos recently, so thanks a lot for sticking with me. Take care. Like when he is safely out of the Sirens' distance or, musical range,